Hi, this is Rayburn Hare with JoinWithMe.life, and I'm continuing a conversation with one of my favorite people. I call him the Colonel, Dennis, because he's a retired colonel from the Marines. And so, once I learned that about him, that's all I've ever called him is the Colonel. And but Dennis, as we've said earlier, thank you for your service to the country. And how old, Dennis, were you when you went into the Marines? How old were you?
22. I just finished my 4th year in college.
So you're 22 years old when you went into the Marines. What possessed that decision? What made you decide I want to go into the Marines? And then as a part of that, when you did you know you'd be 28 years, or was it just a 4-year or 3-year? What was in that decision?
Well, growing up, my dad was in the Navy, World War II, and he talked about that and what he did, and it was interesting to me. And we went to military air shows all the time during the summer months out at Richards Bauer in Missouri. And so we go, we had military in our mind growing up. And then my brother went to college, and then he joined the Marines, and he was 2 years ahead of me. And to be honest, my end of my 4th year, well, it was February, I was going to graduate in May. I had no clue what I wanted to do. I was in agriculture. And I got up one Friday morning, and every weekend I'd drive from Columbia, Missouri to the farm in Lafayette County and work on the farm all weekend and then go back. And sometimes I wouldn't even see my parents because they lived in town. But this particular Friday, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was driving, and I didn't get off the freeway at the farm. For some reason, I kept driving. I said, I'll just go down and talk to a recruiter in Kansas City. Well, when I left that day, I signed up. So that morning when I got up, I had no clue I was going to sign up, but they had some programs I was interested in, and then I signed up and went home and told my folks, and they were so excited. My dad got on the phone and called his boss and said his boss had been in the Army, and had to call him. He said, "Hey, guess what Dennis did today? Signed up in the Marines." And I got 2 of them in the Marines, and we're glad they're doing it. If they want to do that, and not only that, we get to go visit them now wherever they're at.
Isn't that something?
So
as a proud father.
So and mother.
And mother.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure. Initially, I figured I'd go in for 4 or 5 years and come back and help on the farm. 4 or 5 years were up, and they were giving me another promotion, and I said, hey, I asked my dad if he wanted me to come back and help, because he was helping his dad. We still had Hereford cattle. Mm-hmm. He said, no, to be honest, this farm won't support. It's doing good for one family, now supporting my dad and my dad. Mm-hmm. And he said, just stay where you're at, if you want to, but don't feel like you got to come home and take care of us, or the farm will handle it. So that's when I had 8 years in. So I stayed another 20 after that.
Oh, okay.
And we moved several times. I got married, and my wife followed me around, and a lot of the duty stations, my folks would come visit us. Some of them they couldn't, and they enjoyed that. And one time, my brother and I were both stationed together, and that was interesting because he was enlisted and I was an officer, and of course he always laid the groundwork ahead of me showing up, and then, sometimes it was good.
So you made him salute you, huh?
No. The only time he ever saluted was he got to be at my promotion when I got promoted to colonel. Well, and you got to pay silver dollar to the first person that salutes you in rank. So he made sure he was first. That's the only time he ever saluted.
Yes, and that's something.
His career was 30 years. So, and then his son went in the Navy for 20. So between my dad and my brother and myself and my nephew, we have 82 years of service.
So just out of curiosity, I've never heard that. So that's just kind of a tradition that the first person that salutes you, you have to give them a silver dollar.
Supposedly, yeah.
And that's something. How about that?
Yeah.
So your brother.
Yeah.
That's a good story. And so Dennis, spending obviously 28 years, a good part of your life in the military. What do you take? What'd you take away? And you've been out of the military, by the way, for
20 years.
okay. So 28. Then so he's been out 20 years.
Right.
But when you came out of the military, what did you take away from that experience?
It was the hardest thing. The day, within a week after I got out, I was lost.
Mm.
I had been with a certain community for 28 years, a community that no matter what your job was, you had a responsibility not only to yourself but to the people around you. And you didn't want to let them down because you knew the guy to your right and left was going to take care of you. You wanted to do the same. It was a family.
Sure.
And when I got out, I was lost. I tried to get back in, but you can only serve 30 years, and it wouldn't take me back in. But I was lost, and I worked around on a farm with my brother-in-law for a while, and then I got a couple of part-time jobs, and I had to stay active. I'm like I said, I'm not one to sit down and do nothing, and I was getting bored. So, but it was very hard for me to get away from the atmosphere, the discipline, and the camaraderie of the military, especially the Marines. I mean, you're all doing the same mission, and you don't want to let the guys around you down, no matter what your job is.
So Dennis, really, I mean, it's not all about money. So when you come out of the military, obviously with 30 years, I mean, you had, in a sense, a retirement.
Right.
But as you say, it was a sense of pride, a sense of obligation, just a sense of, hey, I now I've got to find my way in life.
Right.
And because this was my life, and of which you became very comfortable, you might
Right.
say. But now well, like I said, it doesn't have anything with money. You wanted to work, you wanted to do this, you wanted to find, your discipline, I guess.
Well, you never got bored because you always had something new. I mean, in years I was in, every 2 or 3 years my job would change, or the people around me would change because you'd be stationed someplace else. The longest I was ever in one place, I think, was 4.5 years. Other than that, you were usually there 2 to 3 years, and you moved. And a lot of times you'd come back again. But no matter, Marine Corps was so small, no matter where you were stationed, you would run into the same people 2 or 3 times during your career. And it was, you wouldn't think that in the military that somebody on the East Coast or overseas at the same time would know you. But yeah, you would meet them 2 or 3 more times. And it was, the money was important, but it wasn't the main thing because it was there. You knew the money was going to be there. You didn't have to worry about it. And you knew you were going to have housing. It may not have been housing like you might buy out in town if you could afford it. It was good housing. You had medical and dental. You didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. And it was job security. As long as you did your job, you were going to be able to stay in.
Real quick, Dennis, if you were going to give advice to some, we'll say 20-year-old, 21, 22-year-old that would go into the military, what would you say? Did you say that's a good investment of your future? What would you say?
I would say if you come out of high school or college, don't know what you want to do, sign up for any of the branches of the military. It doesn't have to be the Marines, any of them. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn leadership principles. Not only that, there's a lot of programs out there. If you don't know which direction you want to head, the military, no matter what branch, will give you certain tests, and they will tell you what you're good at and what you might not be good at. And 99% of the time, they're pretty accurate on some of these skill tests you take. And you can find out what your interests are and be trained in it. And you can also sign up for a college education program, which they will pay for, and it's usually 2 to 1. For every year of college they pay for, you owe them 2.
I see.
And I mean, the cost of college nowadays, and then you can get out, you know, after you serve your commitment, you're free to get out and go about maybe learning what the same thing you did in the military out in the civilian life. Job security. But the one thing that got me the most was by the time I got out, I was working alongside Marines, young Marines that had just come into boot camp. And I would sit them down and talk to them. Some of these kids wouldn't even know who their parents were. Either one or one or the other. Didn't have a home. They wanted discipline. They wanted to be shown how to succeed in life. And those were the kids that came in, and it was rough on them, maybe, you know, through boot camp and stuff like that, once they learned what they were supposed to do and the rules. But they're the ones that usually stuck around for 20 years.
How about that? Well, this is Dennis, the Colonel, and I think that's just fascinating lessons about life. And Dennis, thank you for sharing some of that. Rayburn and Dennis, join with me.life. Thank you.